of Antarashtriya Sahyog Parishad. Welcome to Antarashtriya Sahyog Parishad's another webinar. Today we are going to discuss India-Bangladesh relations, diminishing the past and looking at the future. Actually, it is continuity of the seminar which we had last year in Kolkata in June. We had planned to go to Dhaka and have complete our bilateral seminar which we had planned originally, but because of certain problems and quite recently because of corona issues, we could not go. But the webinar, this wave, gave us an opportunity to interact with each other, and that's why today we are meeting in Delhi. So we have got six eminent panelists who will be discussing the subject matter, and in three broadly divided sessions, which I will come to it later. We all agree that India and Bangladesh, even if they are not so-called time-tested friends, but they have got excellent historical and strategic ties. They have been understanding each other's needs, each other's interests. At times we have problems, no doubt. Still, there are some challenges, and we have resolved to overcome those challenges. But because of geopolitical shifts, and especially the shift towards Asia, is providing us an opportunity to sit together and just look at or go into all the problems which we are facing and all the achievements which we have accomplished, and how we can consolidate all these achievements and how we can meet all the challenges ranging from border problem to refugees to carving a new path on economic and culture, on technological ties. So all these issues are there, and especially when looked at, when India is talking about Act East policy, then definitely Bangladesh has an important role to play, and we also recognize the great significance of Bangladesh in that. Geography is not only bringing us together, but in fact it is asking us to work together also. And how we can do it? Connectivity issues are coming. Connectivity issues is again being pushed by China, and it is being pushed by India also. And connectivity issue not only giving you an economic opportunity or a strategic opportunity, it is also throwing up new challenges, new security challenges. So all these challenges we have to overcome working together. China is coming. China is providing incentives to countries. What could be benefits? What could be the costs of all these incentives which China is providing through BRI or through other connectivity issues? So these are the issues which I think we have to go through. We have to look into with a very open-minded manner. So today we are going to discuss all these issues. We have 3 seminars and we have 6 speakers, which I just discussed. So I am briefly introduce all the speakers who are going to participate in the three panel discussion. The first session, we are going to talk about India, Bangladesh and the War of Liberation. And in that we have speaker Ambassador Shamsher Mobeen Chaudhary, who is former Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh. He was lieutenant in the Pakistani army. So he has really a lot to contribute, lot to tell us how all it happened, how India worked with now Bangladesh earlier in the liberation movement which had taken place. And for his bravery and contribution in the battlefield, the Bangladesh government had conferred upon him the Gallantry Award Veer Bikram. He served as a High Commissioner of Bangladesh to Sri Lanka and Maldives. He was also posted in Germany, Czech Republic, Australia and Slovenia. In October 2001, he was appointed Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh and remained in this post till March 2005. We have our colleague Smriti Patnaik, who is a research fellow at Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis. She joined the institute in 1998 and Before that, she had done her PhD from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Her work basically focuses on India's neighborhood. In the second session, we have got Dr. Ashikur Rahman, again from Bangladesh. He is a senior economist at the Policy Research Institute of Bangladesh. He is also the member secretary of Bangladesh Economist Forum, a leading association of eminent professional and academic economists from Bangladesh. Before that, he completed his PhD in government political economy at the London School of Economics. He also has an MPA, Master of Public Administration, and in Public and Economic Policy, a very nice career graph he has got. And from the Indian side, we have got Sri Pratim Ranjan Bose. He's a very well-known journalist who covers trade, transit, focuses on Northeast. Earlier, he was deputy editor of Hindu Business Line in Kolkata. After leaving the business line, he now contributes extensively on these issues to various newspapers as a researcher and columnist. They are going to discuss the theme India and Bangladesh trade, connectivity, and people-to-people relations. The third session is on in this is slightly broad session, India Bangladesh relations, political, culture, and security aspects. So this is the session in which we have got two very eminent speakers, Professor Dr. Lelu Farra Yasmin, who is from Department of International Relations, University of Dhaka, Bangladesh. She also has got very nice CV. I just read it briefly. So she was a Fulbrighter and a Chevening Fellow with PhD from Macquarie University, Sydney, Australia. She researches on South Asian politics, uh, secularism, gender, and conflict. Her latest publication is India and China in South Asia, Bangladesh Opportunities and Challenges. So we are really going to look forward to listening to her and her viewpoints. She has been working on very diverse areas and very relevant areas. Then we have got last but not the least, Ambassador Veena Sikri, who was former Indian High Commissioner to Bangladesh, joined the Indian Foreign Service in July 1971. She stood first in all India competitive exams conducted by the UPSC, through which she joined Indian Foreign Service. Those who know about the Indian civil services system, you know that UPSC conducts the exam. She served in various capacities in the Ministry of External Affairs. She was also High Commissioner in Malaysia and Consul General in Hong Kong. After retiring from her service, she serves as Professor Ford Foundation Endowed Chair, Bangladesh Studies Program in Academy of International Studies, Jamia Millia Islamia University. She is also visiting senior research fellow at Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, Singapore. Her forthcoming book is on Bangladesh, and which is under publication now. So before I hand the proceeding or hand the chair, ask Professor Ambassador Gupta to chair the proceedings, I would request Sri Syam Parandeji to introduce, tell those who do not know about, those who are new to the Antarashtriya Sahyog Parishad, about Antarashtriya Sahyog Parishad, what is the organization all about, and what it does, and what it is trying to do. So, Shyamji.
Everybody, and good morning. I would like to request all the participants to keep your microphone muted because there is some disturbance, and we have an impressive panel today, and we'll be, listening to excellent stuff. Today's chair, Ambassador Virendra Gupta ji, and the ambassadors from Chair Mubin Chaudhary ji, the former Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh, all other distinguished panelists, distinguished guests, and friends. Antarashtriya Sahyog Parishad had been working with Indian diaspora for last 50 years, though this was registered in 1978, and together with Indian diaspora, which is a vibrant entity spread across almost 200 countries now. ARSP also had been working with the neighboring countries of India. Obviously, Bangladesh, Myanmar, Bhutan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, all these countries, we had been interacting actively. We had been holding conferences, seminars, inviting speakers from these countries. The last one, early this year, was held in Kolkata together Maulana Azad Institute in partnership with that institute. Engagement extended to again, there was another conference with Bhutan. Nepal, of course, goes on. However, since the onslaught of the pandemic, we have taken up to the webinars, and there were webinars earlier, two on Nepal, and this is the first one on India-Bangladesh relationship. अंतर्राष्ट्रीय सहयोग परिषद have been actively working with the diaspora, organizing conferences with them also. Of last years, since it was registered, we have held 4 conferences of parliamentarians among the Indian diaspora. So parliamentarians, and they are very successful. The last was as recent as 2 years back, January 9th, when 141 parliamentarians participated in this conference in Delhi. This was our engagement that each and everybody rise of Indian development. So this is an occasion where we look forward to interacting with our neighborhood, people to people relation, building people to people relationship. Our founding Secretary General, Baleshwar Agarwalji, also used to engage with this country. This year we are celebrating his centenary, and webinar also is part of that celebration. Ministry of External Affairs, Government of ARSP, Antarashtriya Sahyog Parishad, which can be converted to English, for international cooperation in center. We are expect to be one of the rewarding conferences countries as well as will contribute to Indian society's relationship, Bangladesh, and
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Rajiv. I'd like, first of all, to greet our very distinguished panelists from Bangladesh. Welcome to this seminar. We've also lined up very distinguished panelists from India. So I think together we look forward to a very interesting and fruitful deliberation. I would say that it's a very important seminar, webinar for us, for the simple reason that we have been focusing in the last few years on a neighborhood. And when you look at the neighborhood, there is a country which is constantly in denial of good neighborliness. Now, when that happens, I think in that situation, Bangladesh emerges as the most important neighbor for us. And by corollary, by logical corollary, India's relationship with Bangladesh becomes the most important vector in India's neighborhood matrix. Not many people realize that Bangladesh is one of the largest countries in the world, with 180 million population, an economy of nearly or maybe over $1 trillion, a country which has been doing very well in terms of economic growth, having emerged as a country with the second largest per capita income in the whole of South Asia. So I think Bangladesh has done very well for itself. And with the economic imperatives and certain degree of complementarity, I think there is a whole lot of potential which beckons us in terms of India, Bangladesh economic cooperation linkages, both at the government to government level and at the private sector business level. I think also Bangladesh is so important from our point of view. If you look at the length of the land border, I think the general misconception in India is that when you look at the map and you look at the one long straight line that we have with Nepal, but Bangladesh land border is much larger than the land border that India shares with Nepal. The size of economic cooperation, the number of people, I think in every which way, if you look at, Bangladesh is an extremely important relationship for India. And I think we must, I'm happy that we have already begun to invest in that relationship. We have begun to look at that relationship from that perspective. Today's webinar, we are looking at the three important dimensions. And before I go further, I will remiss in not acknowledging the presence of Markande Raiji, the chairman of our Foreign Affairs Committee, and under whose guidance this seminar is taking place. I'd also like to thank Smruti Patnaik from, I don't know the new name of the institute, but the erstwhile IDSA, the largest think tank in India, for having worked and for having provided the academic content to this seminar. Thank you very much, Smruti. These three important segments that we will address, I think when you look at India-Bangladesh relationship, you look at it in the context of how the relationship began. The genesis obviously is the Liberation War. And this issue has been extensively documented. I happened to read a book recently by Jairam Ramesh on P.N. Haksar and Indira Gandhi, intertwined lives. I think it's an excellent, it carries an excellent account of the events leading up to the liberation of Bangladesh. And I think what I was struck by is that there were a lot of attempts, in fact, even from Bangladesh, appealing to India to intervene uh, as early as March, April of 1970. And I think in retrospect, we can very clearly say that it was a very wise decision not to have, uh, you know, fallen to that temptation. Because if that had happened, it would have been seen entirely as something that India had instigated. But I think the ground realities very clearly uh, suggested that it was a movement which has grown from within the country. The genesis lay in the kind of treatment that West Pakistan meted out to people of East Pakistan, Bangladeshis. And India merely responded to a certain degree of aspiration on their part to help them. Uh, Now, we are also going to talk about the security cooperation, the political dimension, and I think I'm very happy that my good friend Veena Sikri has joined. So she will, in fact, take this aspect towards the end. Uh, Although and I think the second segment that we will deal with is the economic cooperation, the connectivity issue. In my opinion, I think that is the most important issue because when you look at the neighbors, uh, there is a natural tendency to uh, invest a lot of effort and attention to political dimension. And in the long run, if you look at it, I think it only damages the relationship. Uh, too much of politics doesn't help, and I think the time has come that we must begin to, sideline politics a little bit and focus on the uh, enormous amount of benefits that can accrue to people of India and our neighboring countries, whichever country we are talking about. In this case, Bangladesh. The enormous amount of benefits that come to both people of India and Bangladesh by focusing on economic cooperation. There is a lot of potential. The business can be expanded, and I'm happy that at the government level, efforts are being made to facilitate border trade with creation of integrated checkpoints. Removing the encumbrances, removing the impediments, creating facilitation. And of course, above all, by improving the connectivity. The name of the game really is to improve the connectivity. And I think once the connectivity is established in terms of roads, infrastructure, in terms of power trade, in terms of maritime trade, inland water routes being activated, which has been done, I think the businesses will take on from there. Finally, a small word about uh, that we have wonderful relationship right from 1971. Although there have been ups and downs, but I think what always affects a relationship between our neighbors, between any neighbors, is the obsessive sense of insecurity. Uh, I've always felt that we need to have greater maturity in dealing with our neighbors. India, as a bigger neighbor, uh, has a responsibility to show greater maturity. Uh, and I think, there is so much geography has brought us together, the history, the culture, the heritage, everything is there. There is so much of commonality between our countries, and we're doing lots of things. Now that doesn't mean that we begin to uh, raise red flags or become very alarmed if there are linkages established by a neighboring country with another country. I mean, I'm specifically referring to China. Uh, there is always this obsessive degree of attention in India on the extent of Bangladesh's relationship with China, the extent of Sri Lanka's relationship with China, the extent of Nepalese relationship with China. And I've always maintained that it should not be necessary for us to raise that question. Bangladesh, as a sovereign country, should have the flexibility in terms of promoting its national interest to manage its relationship with both India and China. If China is going to, undertake projects under BRI or under whatever bilateral mechanism, I think if that benefits Bangladesh, we should rejoice in it rather than raising red flags. The time really is that instead of focusing on what others are doing and focusing on that negativity, because that negativity will never take us any further. I think we have to focus on the positivity, focus on what India can do, what India and Bangladesh together can do. And I'm saying it in firm belief that there is so much that India and Bangladesh can do. So with these few words, I'd like to invite the first panelist. This first segment will deal with the India-Bangladesh and the War of Liberation. We'll begin with the Bangladeshi perspective to be put forward by Ambassador Shamsher Mobin Chaudhry, former Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh. Ambassador Chaudhry, sir, you have the floor. And we'll have about 12 minutes for each of the panelists, so that we have about half an hour left for a little bit of discussion at the end of our discussion. We want to close at 1 o'clock. Thank you, Ambassador Chaudhry.
Thank you, Ambassador Arvind Gupta. And thank you to Antarashtriya Shogya Parishad for organizing this webinar today. I think it is extremely timely and very logical that we have this kind of discourse between the two neighbors whose relationship is founded in history and conditioned by geography. It is not, as Ambassador Gupta said, that even in the warmest of relationships, there will be undulations, which are part of any bilateral relationship. Now, I have, in a very recent article in our leading English daily, the Daily Star, following the visit of Indian Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla, is a very close and a good friend of mine, that the test of the strength of relations between neighbors is its ability to withstand challenges and, if done right, come out looking good in the end, both substantively and perceptively. And that, I think, is the crux of our relationship. We both will have questions about issues. What's very key among them, of course, is the sharing of the waters of the common rivers, because this is an issue that is of life and livelihood. Now, when I say that our relationship is rooted in history, I have fought the War of Liberation. I was already an officer in the army, as I was introduced at the beginning. I was one of the first 7 officers to revolt against the Pakistan army as early as the night of 25th of March, 1971. Major Zia Rahman was the one who led that revolt and fought the Pakistanis face to face, was wounded in action in April, captured by the Pakistanis and kept a prisoner of war, which I would have not seen the daylight after that, because I was supposed to be tried for treason and hanged. But it was the intervention of the Indian Army in December 1971 changed the course of history for me personally and for South Asia generally. So that is the extent of our relationship. And I think our Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, on a visit to India, made a very symbolic gesture by paying tribute to the more than 1,600 Indian Armed Forces personnel who sacrificed their lives during our liberation war in the Eastern Front. So that is where our relationship started. And I'm also very happy that Ambassador Gupta has very candidly come out with the fact that over a period of time, things develop, things evolve. In a post-Cold War era, we see the emergence of a multipolar Asia. And I have addressed this issue at the Asian Security Conference at the Manohar Parrikar ITSA in 2019, I think, where I said that where does Bangladesh find itself in a multipolar Asia? Now, there is a perception and there is a lot of media hype, I would say, not activity, about is India and China competing for influence in Bangladesh or in South Asia in general. And there are indications that this could be the fact. But I'm glad that Mr. Gupta has said that Bangladesh, countries like Bangladesh today are in a position to enjoy or to exercise a degree of autonomy in making its foreign and defense policy choices. That doesn't mean that our relationship with one is against the interest of the other. Or against the depth of the relationship with the other. Our relationship with India will remain very, very firm. We will have issues, we'll discuss and try to resolve with an attitude of mutual interest and mutual respect in mind. Now, as a soldier, as a former soldier, I must express my sorrow and express condolences to the death of about 17 Indian military personnel, or 20, I think, at the Galwan conflict recently with China. Now, the thing is that we should have continuous engagement, both at the government level, at the public level, and at the civil society level between Bangladesh and India to clear the air whenever a clearing of the air is needed. Sometimes early this year, I think, there was what I thought was a very innovative construct. It was called the Dhaka Dialogue. It was jointly organized by the Indian think tank ORF and the Bangladesh government think tank BIISS, Bangladesh Institute of International and Strategic Studies, where it was really public diplomacy on display at the public level. That our Prime Minister inaugurated the event, showed full support of the government and endorsement by the government of Bangladesh, and that both the major political parties in India, the BJP and the Congress, were represented at a very high level at the dialogue, shows a bipartisan support for this kind of interaction with Bangladesh. It was a very open and free discussion. Questions were asked, answered were sought. The way forward was discussed. And yes, and I think it should become an annual event, not just by the government. Others like your organization can also take a similar initiative. The more we broaden the people-to-people contact through the civil society, what is fashionably called track 2 diplomacy, I think more we clear the air between our countries. Now, I asked at that particular Dhaka dialogue that does Bangladesh have to make a choice between, say, the Indo-Pacific strategy, of which India is deeply involved with the United States and Japan and Australia, or the China initiative of BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. I don't think it's a matter of making a choice between them. We have to look which one is of interest to us, which one serves our domestic, economic, and social interest more, which is in the more geopolitical sense of crucial to us. I have some questions about the economic benefit to Bangladesh from the BRI. I'm still to get some answers. I think countries like Myanmar, Pakistan, and maybe Sri Lanka are more directly impacted by the BRI. I have to look at the details of Bangladesh's its impact on Bangladesh of the Belt and Road Initiative. Now, India over time, and more importantly over recent times, I think is emerging as a major development, a very important development partner for Bangladesh. Now, of the line of credit that India has for Bangladesh, for the world, Bangladesh is the largest recipient of your line of credit. Most of it, and many of it, is in the form of grant. And this, I think, is very key. It's a very clear signal that how much India is willing to make an economic investment not in terms of industry, for the relationship even closer. What does come to my mind, this is a relationship that started with the deepest form and content of defense cooperation right in 1971, when two armies fought shoulder to shoulder and shed blood. Over time, we see, though, that this aspect of bilateralship has been overtaken by the nature of our relationship with China. China has invested heavily in our defense sector, and they remain the largest provider of military hardware to the Bangladesh military. Should India be competing on that? I don't think it is necessary to compete on that and try to match that, because I think our priorities are not defense cooperation. Our priorities are economic cooperation, social cooperation, people-to-people cooperation, and removing the unresolved issues. We have done remarkably well on on finalizing the land boundary. It took more than 4 decades. It should not have. It should have been done very, very early on. Through an international tribunal, we have resolved our maritime boundary issue with India. What remains really to be resolved is the sharing of the waters of the common rivers. This is something where we really have come up short. And I think focus should be given on how we address this issue and how we move this process forward. Now, also in Bangladesh, currently, of course, pandemic is the big thing. Now, when the Indian Foreign Secretary came here, the media went public saying that he's here to say that India is also doing a lot of research on a vaccine for COVID-19, and Bangladesh should look at their vaccine. And the word vaccine diplomacy has now become part of the lexicon of international diplomacy. Now, here again, I think Bangladesh Foreign Secretary has very wisely said that, of course, we'll discuss the vaccination with India and we keep our options open. But I think the visit of the Indian Foreign Secretary, there were some questions raised about its format, but it was a very clear signal that in spite of the travel restrictions imposed by COVID-19, that Bangladesh and India continues this dialogue at different levels. And this was the first visit by the Indian Foreign Secretary to any country since the advent of the pandemic. So that in itself shows where the Indian government has chosen to demonstrate its priority relationship. How India's relationship shapes up with Sri Lanka or Nepal or Maldives or Bhutan or Afghanistan perhaps is for Indian and those countries or the governments of those countries to decide. That doesn't dictate our relationship with India. So I think we should move this relationship forward through continuous dialogue and focus on and the sensitivities that a small neighbor always suffers from when dealing with a larger neighbor. This is a global phenomenon. It is not confined to the India-Bangladesh relationship. I have served as ambassador in Germany. I saw even in part of European Union, Netherlands attitude towards relationship with Germany. I've served as ambassador to the United States, and I've seen how Mexico and Canada, often come up with questions about the nature of the relationship. So this is a global phenomenon. And I entirely agree with Ambassador Gupta that the onus lies always on the bigger neighbor to make the right initiative and move the process forward. I guess at this stage I'll end here and wait to hear from other panelists for their very, very valuable comments. I thank the organizers for this webinar today, and I hope we'll have more of them, not just on the net, but maybe face-to-face when the situation permits. Thank you so very much.
I thank Ambassador Chaudhary and for his suggestion that there should be greater and more extensive people-to-people dialogue involving various think tanks and NGOs in India. And I think our dialogue is an effort in that direction itself. His suggestion that rather than wasting energies on competition with China, because that is not going to take us anywhere, we must look at our own strengths. And there are, fortunately, innumerable strengths available to India to pursue its relationship in Bangladesh. And we need to focus on what we can do and what are the areas which have not been addressed satisfactorily. Ambassador Chaudhary talked about sharing of water resources. Everybody knows that that is an area where some work needs to be done. And I think in all sincerity, the work should be carried on in that so that whatever remaining sensitivities that there might be get completely eliminated. If you read the media, much has been made of a phone call that Sheikh Hasina had with Imran Khan. And suddenly the whole media went, there was a new buzz that Bangladesh will abandon India. Bangladesh is going to reboot its relationship with Pakistan. And I think that only shows very immature understanding of the dynamics of the international relations. India-Bangladesh relationship is quite frankly, very robust and very strong to withstand. And it's a normal thing for leaders of two countries. After all, Bangladesh has not broken off its diplomatic relations with Pakistan. It has diplomatic relations. So what's wrong in Sheikh Hasina making a phone call with Imran Khan? Much as our Prime Minister can make a phone call with China, even though our relationship is very turbulent at this moment in time. So at this stage, I'd like to invite Smruti Patnaik, research fellow at the IDSA, to make her presentation. Smruti.
For some time on this particular aspect. So let me start with India's role in the liberation war, as Ambassador Chaudhary was mentioning, and also Ambassador Gupta was also saying the same thing, that India was perhaps very much unprepared when the refugees started into India, around April. The flow of the refugee increased around June and July, but initially India's contention was that it will provide shelter to the refugees who are coming in, but also at the same time it insisted on dialogue between Bangladesh and Pakistan. Of course, it is Bangladesh now, Sheikh Mujib and Yahya Khan regime at that point of time. And that point of time, to look at the literature, it suggests that Pakistan was saying, trying to make a kind of pause, that whatever was happening within East Pakistan at that point of time was probably instigated by India. And that is one of the reasons why India did not recognize the Bangladesh government in exile, in spite of receiving strikes from them, and only recognized on the 6th of December after Pakistan launched an attack on India. And just to quote on the May 24th, what the Prime Minister said in the Parliament, said in the Parliament, on this entire, what was happening inside East Pakistan, to blame it on India. So to quote her, she said, it is mischievous to suggest that India has had anything to do with what happened in Bangladesh. This is an insult to the aspiration and spontaneous sacrifice of the people of Bangladesh, and a calculated attempt by the rulers of Pakistan to make India a scapegoat for their own mistakes. It is also a crude attempt to deceive the world community. As a negotiated settlement to the political crisis was not in sight, India made proposal to deal with the consequences. So this was perhaps the kind of background in which India has to deal with. For example, if you look at the refugee figure, which started from April itself, especially after the Operation Searchlight on the 5th of March, when the genocide happened, started from the Dhaka University campus, and of course, all of us we know 3 million Bangladeshis perished in that genocidal attack by the Pakistan army. So when you look at that, I think the point which India was making at that point of time, that what was claimed to be an internal problem of Pakistan has also become an internal problem for India. Pakistan cannot be allowed to seek solution to its political and other problems at the expense of India on Indian soil. So this is the statement which was made by the Prime Minister at that point of time, speaking to the Parliament. Of course, very interestingly, from the beginning, there were many members of Parliament who insisted that India must recognize Bangladesh as soon as possible. However, the government always informed the parliamentarians, saying them that basically, the part of recognition is under consideration, the government is thinking about it, and at the same time, the recognition did not come. So here, very interestingly, what India did at that point of time is very interesting. It is the first reaction was to provide shelter to the refugees. Like I said, in August around, the daily rate of crossing was 40,000 to 60,000. That it peaked in August. And it also raised fund for them. Like, for example, the essential, the non-essential component of Indian government's budget at that point of time was reduced, a clear instruction was provided that non-essential expenditure cannot be spent, and rather that money should be used for the refugee. And each of the state also were asked to contribute to the upkeeping of the refugee, because all of us we know that even if the international support to the refugees, to the kind of the number of refugees which India was hosting at that point of time was not sufficient. And at one point of time, there was also this discussion to raise the passenger fare in the train, and all of us we know how difficult it is when you raise the passenger fare in the train, because it also affects your window plate. But India went ahead to raise the fund by raising the passenger fare of the train which we were running to provide for the refugees. The rations also was provided by the Indian government, very minimal, but still it was provided. And at one point of time, since India was not providing recognition to the Bangladeshi government in exile, I found that very interestingly, some of the ruling party member of parliament demonstrated against the government for not recognizing Bangladesh and were arrested under section 188 of the penal code. And I found that very, very interesting. Member of parliament going against the government decision and demonstrating why the government of India is not recognizing the government of Bangladesh. But I also found it very interesting throughout the debate in parliament. India kept on using the terminology East Bengal, though I can see in Indira Gandhi's speech he mentions Bangladesh, but most of the debate in parliament kept on mentioning East Bengal. So we moved away from using East Pakistan and slightly reluctant, to use the terminology Bangladesh, but we kept on, making that shift that it is East Bengal now. And the initial reaction was that, nobody in the government actually had any kind of intelligence input where they would know what is happening to Egypt. That kind of information was not available. So India was very, very cautious in its approach to the entire problem, while insisting a dialogue between Yahya Khan and Yahya Khan, insisting and the elected representative of Bangladesh at that point of time. India made it very clear that if ever there is a solution to this problem, then Bangladesh should take back the refugees which are staying in India, because India had the fear that many of the people who are living in India as refugees will not be taken back. And this fear was genuine. Like, for example, India never gave out the religious composition of the refugees at that point of time. And though this religious composition of the refugees was provided to the European and the Western countries, but this was not given to the Indian media. And all of us, we know, out of the 10 million, 7 million refugees were Hindus, because India was very, very cautious of the diversity and the implications it may have on, on the Indian government's approach at that point of time. And very interestingly, that this is also another point how the world reacted to it. All of us, we know the Chinese reaction to it, and the United States reaction to it, which all the time kept on insisting that to provide support to the refugees, but at the same time it was this entire thing was focused as an internal problem. Now let me just quote some of the the kind of some work which I'm doing. Rather, the political development and the butchery were treated as Pakistan's internal affairs that broke non-interference by the international community. This remained a major guiding principle for most of the countries in the Muslim world, that it is an internal affair of Pakistan and no country should get involved in the internal problem, because that is how Pakistan projected it. And this approach was illustrated from the fact that out of 104 nations of the world which voted to stop war between India and Pakistan and the liberation of Bangladesh, 88 states which voted in the United Nations had population less than the refugees who fled from Bangladesh. So there were a number of nations who voted on the basis of peace at any price. So this should tell the international community's approach to the entire thing which was happening in 1971 and the difficulties and the challenges which India faced at that point of time. Not only India funded and supported the Bangladesh community in exile to visit various capitals in the world and convince those countries about the kind of situation which is arising, which is happening in the former East Pakistan at that point of time. But India, the Prime Minister herself took several trips to many countries.
Sorry, Smriti. Could you just lift your microphone, because people are complaining that your voice is not clear. Okay.
So now is it clear? Is it clear? Now is it audible?
Yeah, it's much better.
Okay. So basically, at that point of time, when India was campaigning in the world capital, arguing for recognition, to recognize what was happening within East Pakistan. So there are many countries who were not, willing to give that kind of recognition to the genocide which was happening, and they were terming this entire development within East Pakistan at that point of time as internal affair of Pakistan. And that is how also Pakistan projected to the outside world that what is happening within are, basically done by the miscreants, and it is an internal affair of Pakistan, and it is India which is interfering. And that is one of the reasons why the recognition to the Bangladesh government in exile came much later. And if I can report, since many of you missed it, because this is something which becomes very interesting, from the geopolitical point of view. Like for example, the approach is illustrated from the fact that out of 104 nations of the world who voted to stop war between India and Pakistan and the liberation of Bangladesh, 88 states which voted in the UN had populations less than the refugees who fled from Bangladesh at that point of time. And there were a number of nations who voted on the basis of peace at any price. So, in a sense, it essentially does not mean a support for the liberation of Bangladesh at that point of time. And now, very quickly, as India also was insisting that refugees need to return to their own country, and therefore that was one of the reasons why India did not recognize the Bangladesh government in exile, as Ambassador Gupta was also mentioning. And India had two kind of approach to this entire problem which was happening in 1971. One is the diplomatic approach, and as I had explained it before, that India not only visited many of the capital of the world to convince, the kind of crisis which is facing as the, because of the refugees who have sought refuge in India. And it also made it clear that, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi at that point of time made it clear that they are not refugees in the sense we have understood this word since partition. They are victims of war who have sought refuge from the military terror across the frontier. So this was the main point which Mrs. Gandhi was maintaining at that point of time. And also at the same time, this the insistence was that this needs a diplomatic solution, and Pakistan needs to resolve this issue, and they cannot dump the entire problem on India and seek a solution on India's own territory, as I have put it before. So the diplomatic approach also entailed not only campaigning in various capitals of the world, but also at the same time supporting the Bangladesh government in exile to go and represent their own case in various capitals so that it becomes credible. It becomes a credible voice to represent and tell to the world outside what was happening. The last approach which India had was the military approach, as all of us we know. And the military approach, as from the beginning, I was making this argument that India was not prepared for the military approach from the beginning, and it did not actually was quite unprepared for the kind of crisis which it unfolded after the 25th of March. Like, for example, in 1971, India itself had completed its own election, very much busy with the internal part of the election. It had not given so much attention at that point of time to what was happening in East Pakistan at that point of time, though closely following the Yahya Mujib talks, which continued and broke down, I think, on the 7th of March, when Mujib was arrested and later was shifted.
Smriti, you have 2 more minutes.
Yeah. So therefore, the approach developed over the period of time. I think by August, September, India was, thinking of this option of the military intervention. And it only because, the initial military intervention, if it would have happened, then obviously it would have been portrayed as India's design to divide Pakistan, or India's interference in the internal affairs of Pakistan, because that is what Pakistan had sold to the entire world community at that point of time. So therefore, as I said, the open military intervention happened only after the 6th of December, when Pakistan attacked in the West Pakistan. So therefore, taking this entire India's own experience of the liberation war and the kind of genocide which particular Bangladesh faced at that point of time, actually leads us to the thing that we should not forget that the kind of sacrifice which was made during the liberation war. And of course, the liberation war was fought under certain ideals which Bangladesh holds very, very dear to its heart. And perhaps those are the ideals which need to guide the two countries in bettering the bilateral relationship between the two. I just end here. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I didn't know that I was not audible.
Well, thank you, Smriti, for refreshing our memories of events in 1971, leading to the birth of Bangladesh, and a very restrained manner in which India had to conduct itself, despite provocations and despite demand not only from the freedom fighters in Bangladesh, but also a very important segment of the political, this thing in India. A lot of, including J.P. Narayan, for instance, Jayaprakash Narayan was very adamantly pushing the government to, recognize the Bangladesh government in exile much earlier, and even to send, actually get involved in the fight, which I think I'm glad that government did not, resisted that kind of pressure. At this stage, we're running a little bit late, so I will request my, forthcoming panelists to probably reduce their presentation a little bit. 10 minutes I will have for each one. We'll start with Dr. Ashikur Rahman, senior economist from Dhaka, to focus on trade issues, connectivity, and people-to-people relationship. I think the economic relationship, which underpins, how we can carry forward and improve the relationship for the benefit of our peoples. Professor Rahman.
Thank you, Ambassador Gupta, and my good afternoon to everybody in India, and also I can see my respected Ambassador Shamsher Mubin Chaudhary, who I hold very dear, and also Professor Yasmin, Ambassador Sikri, and to all the other panelists. Good afternoon. Um, I think um, I think Ambassador Chaudhary has given a good bigger overview of the kind of origin we had, the genesis that you are talking about. And he mentioned an important point, which kind of gives cue to what we have to understand while looking at the India-Bangladesh economic relationship, which is that any country that which is very serious in taking its economic development forward cannot ignore four political entities now. It cannot ignore US, it cannot ignore China, it cannot ignore India, and it cannot ignore European Union. I mean, any country that is operating and navigating in this global economy has to deal with these four political entities, have to identify the potential benefit from these four political entities. And Bangladesh is no different. Bangladesh stands in that crux, and we have to find, and as you said, that there's no reason to be extra sensitive or extra how do I say, insecure if we are talking to these four major power. Anybody who has interest in long-term economic development will do so. Historically, I have to say that we do have to recognize that our economic relations with India were not shaped by economic considerations. The political outlook of the government of the day mattered, especially for Bangladesh. After the assassination of our founding father, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in 1975, I think we have to accept that political decision makers who took charge empowered and to an extent manufactured a strong anti-Indian sentiment in Bangladesh, which had implications for economic cooperation. Now, this changed in 1996 and this changed in 2008 when Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina took charge of the government. I think we referred to some of the cases of how goodwill was generated on the behalf of Bangladesh. You know, we addressed your security concerns in the Northeast, and India also reciprocated by showing goodwill in solving the land boundary act and the maritime uh, boundary negotiations and in the international court. So I think what happened with this political goodwill that has been generated over the last 10 years, that now economic relations are measured more rationally and not through the old pathological mistrust between neighbors and especially between Bangladesh and India that was there. Now, coming to the relations, what Bangladesh for India is a very, as you correctly say, that India is a very good destination for Bangladesh in terms of trade, in terms of connectivity. In fiscal year 19, India imported $400 billion of goods, which shows that India's appetite for imports have changed a lot and it's growing. Unfortunately, Bangladesh only captured a fraction of it. Our exports to India was highest in fiscal year 19, which was roughly around $1.3 billion. Our total exports was 40 billion. So you can see it's just a fraction of our exports are going to India. But if you look at the time series between fiscal year 14 and fiscal year 19, within a matter of 5 years, our exports have went from 400 million to 1.3 billion. Now, in Bangladesh, often in political rhetoric, we talk about the trade imbalance between Bangladesh and India, and we hype that up. But our trade imbalance between Bangladesh and China is even higher. If you look at exports, our exports to India is higher in value and also in number of goods. But the concern that remains, and I think it is still a concern, that non-tariff barriers, as an economist and as we speak to Bangladeshi business community, the non-tariff barriers have remained a real source of annoyance for Bangladeshi part, and we are not being able to, you know, the explore the true potential of the Indian market because of non-tariff barriers, such as, you know, custom valuation issues, such as chemical test issues, such as, you know, non-acceptance of certificates of rules of origin issues, technical standards being questioned at the border. So, there's a common saying that exports to Delhi is more expensive than our export to US or Europe, and that has been problematic. And one of the way we export to India is 50% is done through land, and which makes the land borders, the inefficiencies within the land borders, both on our part and on the Indian part, are very troublesome for our business community. And that, I think, is an issue that we have to talk and we have to resolve as we go forward, like we have done in the past on the Land Boundary Act and on other avenues. The connectivity is a win-win avenue. Especially, I think the way I see it is that in this bargaining game, if you call it, between Bangladesh and India, India has an upper hand on Bangladesh when it comes to giving Bangladesh the market access, because India is a market for 1 billion people, and it's going to be one of the top 3 economies very soon, within the next decade or 2 decades. The India definitely has an upper hand in that bargaining game, but Bangladesh also has an upper hand in allowing mainland India to connect with Northeast India through inland water, through road and through railroads. And as you know, anybody, Kolkata to Karimganj, Kolkata to Shilighat, you talk about railway connection from Kolkata to Agartala. If these can be formed, you can see that the distance is going down by 1,000 kilometers for Indian goods to transfer from West Bengal to the Northeast states. So I feel that given these clear win-win avenues are there, I feel that the kind of what we need now at this point is, I feel that the political will is there, because I've seen over the last 10 years that there's a clear political will from both Bangladesh and Indian side to solve problems. And but for some reason we see that the bureaucratic tendencies within both Bangladesh and India are not up to mark to solve these problems and reach the real potential of this relationship. For some reason, our administrative efforts to actually materialize these dividends have fallen short. This is also true, when I see Bangladesh-China relationship. We were talking about the line of credit with India. India has committed $7.5 billion to Bangladesh. A fraction of it has been used. But this problem is also with China. It's not like that it's an India-centric issue. China has committed $24 billion of investment, but again, a fraction of it has been used over the last 5 years. So I feel that if this realization sinks in within our administration, that there is a real economic benefit to be materialized between India and Bangladesh in terms of connectivity and trade, and these are problems that are not rocket science. Many countries have solved them. If we approach these problems with that kind of focus, I think we can take our cooperation to the next level. I feel that the political will is there. What I will finish with is that, unfortunately, at both sides, Bangladesh and India, I think somehow our administrative capacity has failed our political aspirations to form that deeper bond. Why that is the case, I think that is something needs more introspection. Why we are not being able to form those bridges, I think that needs more dialogue. And I think if this kind of track two, track one conversations keep happening, I think the realization will sink in. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much. And I'll take questions whenever we open the forum. Thank you, Ambassador Gupta.
I thank Dr. Rahman. Thank you very much. I think I like the very positive perspective on the broad relationship, economic relationship. That there are issues, but those issues can be sorted out, and particularly when you look compared with China, as you rightly said, that there is a trade imbalance that India has with Bangladesh, which needs to be addressed. But then Bangladesh's trade imbalance with China is even greater. And that there are administrative bottlenecks, and I think that only brings to fore the obvious conclusion: hang the government. I think leave it to people to carry on and conduct the relationship. Uh, it is a fact that China's pledge under BRI to many governments, many countries, has remained largely declaratory. I think the issue here is that one has to proceed in an environment of trust, that you can't afford to have mistrust between India and Bangladesh in building forward the economic relations. And what needs to be done, and I think some work is going on in that direction to create integrated checkpoints, testing laboratories. So I hope that many of the issues that Dr. Rahman referred to will be taken care of as we go along. Uh, at this stage, I'd like to invite Mr. Pratim Ranjan Bose from Calcutta. He's been a columnist and researcher. But I think most important from my point of view that he's from Calcutta, and I was very keen to have somebody from the Indian side actually coming from Kolkata, so that we are able to factor in that very important perspective. When we very often we discuss India's relationship with Bangladesh sitting in Delhi, and lose sight of the perspective, very important perspective that will be brought by people who are living in the bordering state, in the same manner that you cannot discuss in any holistic sense India's relationship with Sri Lanka unless you factor in the views prevailing in Tamil Nadu. So I think, Mr. Bose, welcome, and you have the floor, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I must thank Dr. Raman for making my job easier. But just tell me, can you see a slide? I hope you're not seeing it.
Yes,
right?
yes, it is there.
Yes, I can see you as well on the slide.
Okay, fine. Thanks. So I'm taking you quickly. Indeed, Doctor, as I said, that Dr. Raman really made my job easier. So this is, we all know, just giving a quick review of what is the scene around. I'm a media strategist. I worked for 30 years in media in senior positions. So, I will request everyone to not to take that into consideration, and that is our failure. That we are, politics. If we look at politics, whether in India or Bangladesh or US, the media strategy has moved away from the traditional media to other forms of media. So it is a failure of the administration to not to effectively use that. So back to the topic, I strongly believe that things have changed, and things have really changed substantially in last 10 years. If we see South Asia, as we know the composition, so I'm not getting into that. Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Bangladesh are India's most important partners. Out of that, Nepal is a very weak economy, and India has really little headroom there because it is catering 70% of export and import. So that leaves us with Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, and of which Bangladesh is the fastest growing economy, not only in the region, but in the globally. It has built a reputation about its growth. The trade framework in the region is around duty-free access to LDCs, that is 98% on the tariff line. Bangladesh is a beneficiary. SAFTA is there, and with Sri Lanka, there is a Indo-Sri Lanka FTA. The regional trade is rising. India's share of regional trade, if we look at exports, in last 10 years, if we look at 5% to 7%, imports have increased from 0.6% to 0.8%, which looks small, but it's actually big because none of the neighbors do have the capacity, and they are missing out on high value items. I mean, a big bulk of India's import is oil. So, you can rule that out, and the neighbors are not good at manufacturing. Sri Lanka is a little ahead in terms of a varied basket. But Bangladesh is one product country practically in terms of exports. So total trade and almost doubled. GST brought a very interesting change. I mean, I don't know why it missed the discussion altogether. I just wrote a paper for VIF. Over last, you can see the figures. Over last 2 years, there has been a drastic change in the situation, and Bangladesh has been the biggest gainer of GST, which means, one thing, what it means is, hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello,
yes.
can you hear me?
Please go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So the exports have doubled, as also Dr. Rahman pointed out, and it is yes, it is right. If you look at purely, though it is not a very valid argument, one must not look at merely at this negative balance. But if since it comes up in the political and general narrative, so that way the India SAARC trade, India Bangladesh trade is more equitable in nature. We all know that the cooperation is rising on the East, and it is rising at a very substantial level. About the non-implementation of BVI and MBA and all these things. But my view from the very beginning was it was not easy. It wouldn't be easy to implement an MBA. But this MBA became a driver for many cooperation. It is true. It is not happening multilaterally, and multilateralism doesn't come so easily. It rides on bilateralism, and bilaterally things are picking up. We are building a political economic narrative towards that. It will take its own time. It has its own history. You cannot just build something on thin air overnight. So connectivity wise, loads of change. I haven't gone into detail because everyone has the details, 9 or 10 rail connections, Asian highways, which are already there. Between Bangladesh and Bhutan, Bangladesh and Nepal, connectivities are established. A wide array of activities going on, and in over next maximum 5 years, we will see things are falling into pieces, and that will change, that will bring quite a paradigm change in terms of logistics availability is concerned. Now, availability, why I said availability is because availability is one thing. We have a coastal shipping agreement which is 5-year-old, but the usage part needs another set of second generation efforts. So these are coming. I hope they will be coming. Energy is going to occupy. One interesting thing that has happened is that the integration. We always look at politics, whether this politics will do that, that. No, it is not going to happen, that way. Energy is going to keep us together, and it is a win-win. Bangladesh needs 2.5 times more oil equivalent in next 20 years. I'm factoring in the conservation initiatives. So where will it get? It has to get, and it has to get it supply assurance has to be there, and also cost efficiency has to be there. Otherwise, you have to put up those infrastructures, and infrastructures don't give you the money. It is a very long payback period. So that is how the win-win is coming. In particular, now, where we are, the figures are known, everything is known. Look at this Kolkata Chittagong shipping tariff. The latest tariff putting between $500 to $700 per box for one-day journey. From Kolkata, Singapore, it is $200 for 5-day journey. Right. Now, this is clearly super normal profiteering going on, and some intervention has to be there to break it. I mean, purely a $200, I mean, if I assume that there is no return cargo, so $200 per box, maximum $300 can give them super normal profit. So something exceptional going on here. Now, these things are to be broken. And IWT and all these things are happening. Yes, over dependence on road sector. Whenever you are depending on only one sector, so naturally the inefficiency, cartelization, and all those things will a whole political economy grow there. So you have to break that cartel. Bangladesh is 80, as I said, it's single product, 85% textiles and low compatibility. Passenger movement is also one-sided. Now, last year there were 21 lakh Bangladeshis arrived in India, but Indian visits are less, 1.5 lakh. So that requires attention somewhere. It is just enough. Someone has to do something on the other side also. You cannot just send people out there. There are restrictive clauses on capital movement. That is what is hurting the FDI potential. If we look at the last 10 years movement, we will see that earlier FDI used to come till 2009-10. FDI used to come in single digit from India. Then it moved to around 50. Now it is moving to around 100 per year. Right. So there is a gradual shift, and these Indian FDI is a little more diversified. When I look at data, and all this data are collected from ITC. So when I look at data, Indian FDI is a little more diversified when compared to China. China is coming in a burst, and then we saw that in Sri Lanka also. It came in a 3-year burst, 3 or 4 year burst. So we have to see where it goes. But I don't see much. There is a lot of competitive strength over here. And little cross investment for Bangladesh. This is a problem area. If you look at Sri Lanka, there are cross investments, so to a certain extent. This must grow. That is what I think. B2B relations are still weak. We are just selling goods to each other. That's all. So G2G became the mainstream, and this must, B2B has to come on top. Over the last 10 years, Indian export basket to BD has changed. Bangladesh has undergone a change. You can see the composition here. Is that, earlier it was mostly agriculture commodities. So we were meeting the primary needs. Now you see the, ratio of cotton has come down, though the absolute value has gone up. Energy, as I said, is close, nearing $1 billion trade. And it is just the beginning. Once the pipeline comes up, things will increase rapidly. But if we look at Bangladesh's export to India, there is a real cause of, there is some cause of concern. All you see is that textiles exports have increased, and it has increased only, literally after the GST advantage. What happened with GST? GST was integrated to imports, and that required subsuming of duties other than basic customs duty. Now that created a lopsided situation where the imported goods are actually taxed. The tax incidence is lesser than the domestically produced goods. With that, not only Bangladesh, but even Sri Lanka, everyone, Vietnam, all have increased their position in Indian market. But I don't think it is in the long term, it is not going to give much dividend, because India has a more integrated, textile sector where you have control over the raw material. So it is, the factor driven things are not going to take very far. And the veg fat oil, I don't know, I have to explore it further. But what I assume from the regional trend is that this has happened because of the ban on Malaysia that India put last year. So there has become some kind of rerouting on this, the edible oil part. Otherwise, it's all same. So as when we are looking at from here onwards, if we see where we are going, the India is stepping up its logistics efficiency very, very rapidly. That is one good thing that is happening in India. And I'm a logistics man, so I'm very bullish about it. And I can see the change. The external logistics option with Bangladesh, as we know, are widening and improving. Means, and at the same time, this Atmanirbhar Bharat is about increasing India's manufacturing efficiency and making it more a competitive destination for FDI. So all these are, I mean, let us expect this is going to increase the competitive economy and the widen and make the product baskets better, right? So that makes the outlook for insofar as exports is concerned and the total trade is concerned more stable. I don't think it is going to be, it can be disturbed by politics, that easily. And competitiveness to, as things will be going at the landed cost of goods from India to Bangladesh will be lesser. So naturally, there can be better market share or better market access. Energy, as I said, will be a major anchor in the future trade, not only with Bangladesh, but with all the economies. But with Bangladesh, it is important because Bangladesh is a growth economy and growth is a factor of energy consumption. The problems are here. At current pace, Bangladesh will take longer to tidy up its internal infra, which means it's a product is going to land in Bangladeshi ports, whether land port or whether seaport, at less cost. But then to move it inside Bangladesh, it will be costly. So that will keep the consumption suppressed. But the bigger problem, when you look at exporting, which is more important, Bangladesh has to capture, as Dr. Rahman said, that Bangladesh has to take advantage of Indian market. And the current model of exporting only ready-made garments, that may not work. That is my fear, because it is an unfolding story. But whatever I could gather from Bangladesh through my sources is that a consolidation has started. And post-COVID, we can expect some health, safety, and issues to be stringent, and automation is already rising across the world, including in India. And also in Bangladesh, so far as I have seen figures, there has been increasing automation in RMG sector that led to some job loss. So there will be some structural problems here. So this, and at the same time, the other things haven't really come to a critical level, other productions, and not yet that competitive. So if we put that India's internal logistics will be better, it will be very, much more easier and cheaper to carry goods from Indian mainland to Northeast, and Bangladesh's domestic internal efficiency is not growing to that extent, then it will become a problem. This is what right now it is operating on a locational advantage. For example, after Bangladesh allowed movement of goods through to Northeast, now Tripura is sourcing its LPG through Bangladeshi importers. Okay, this is a savings to India's IOC, and it is benefiting Bangladesh. But these are merely locational. This is long, very vast. I don't see huge opportunity, because after all, Northeast is a small market. So, in terms of consumption of this kind of essentials, if you have to grow, you have to grow with the more merit segment. And so the next is where I would expect things to happen. Bangladesh has taken a very nice strategy to put up these SEZs. But what are, this weak infra, the poor perception of governance, weak institutions, and most importantly, restriction on movement of money? These are the irritants. These are, we all have the figures of Bangladesh, the FDI inflow in Bangladesh. So we know this is where the problem lies. And this problem has to be, this reform has to come from Bangladesh. There are, I think, and I just set a goal of a short-term and mid approach, which could be, this is just, there is just what I could feel, and it requires requires deeper study. I think there is textile, we have to create a value chain. So there is untapped potential in man-made fiber, active pharmaceutical ingredient, API and AI, which is India is a large, we all know pharmaceuticals, and India is also one of the world's top exporter of chemicals and pesticides. And we, all these things are imported by the raw material, basic raw material, which is not a high-tech material, is imported by India. Unfortunately, Bangladesh also imports them. Now, if Bangladesh fits into the pipeline, then we can have a more complementary relationship. And this is also a low-hanging fruit, local level value in Northeast and Bangladesh. In border areas, I think there is a possibility of aggregation, combining both sides. But one has to look at it with the short term, and as I think Dr. Rahman also pointed to that extent, to that direction to some extent. I believe Bangladesh has, because of its geography, this logistics can be a option for Bangladesh to create a value chain. That is where it fits in. It also has certain advantages. It has a better maritime, riverine cargo share, etc., compared to India. So recently, when there was some bidding going on for our internal waterways, the boat manufacturing and etc., we saw competition from Bangladesh, and that's a very healthy sign where things, someone is coming with they definitely have a competitive edge in terms of in those areas, but that edge should be increased, that they must work on. And tourism, I don't know why it never worked, but this is an area which is just ignored. I'm just giving one example. Shiliguri is an area through which huge number of foreign tourists are
Mr.
moving
Bose,
to.
you have 2 minutes more, please.
I'm just at the end of the presentation. So it is a junction point. It is a huge number of tourists, both foreign and domestic, are moving to different directions, including in Guwahati, in Northeast, and this way in Darjeeling. Why can't a small diversion be made? Why can't a small circuit be made to the destination? Why can't some destinations be created? There is a Facebook group in Bengali, Purono Kolkatar Golpo, and I find one researcher from Bangladesh putting up regularly stories about the old Jamindar palaces in Bangladesh, and the kind of readership it has, the kind of recalling it has. This kind of things can really work. So thank you very much. I think I am ending over here.
Thank Mr. Bose. And I think, as Dr. Rahman, you did refer to vastly improved economic relations between India and Bangladesh in the last 10 years or so. But there are impediments, and those impediments need to be addressed. And I think we all agree that this is a work in progress. The relationship needs to be taken to the next level. Not just goods, but you have to think in terms of trade and services as well. Tourism is a very important sector that needs to attention. Energy, power trade is happening already, connectivity. So these are issues which will, if properly addressed, will take us to the next level. We come to the last segment of our discussion, which is on the political, cultural, and security aspects, no less important than the economic cooperation that we've been. I think, may I request everybody to please switch off their mics, because there's a lot of disturbance. And I think only the requested speaker would please open this mic. We cannot hear each other. So at this stage, the last segment, we deal with political, cultural, and security aspects. We have two very distinguished panelists for this session, for this segment. We'll begin with Professor Yasmin, head of or in the International Relations Department at the University of Dhaka. So Professor Yasmin, you have 10 minutes. I'm sorry as we come to the closing of the webinar, we always get restricted for time. So I think I'll appreciate very much if you try and summarize it in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor. I thank the organization to invite me to speak about a very pertinent issue that has caught attention of many observers, political commentators, and policymakers as well. And it's a privilege, it's an honor to be able to speak amongst these distinguished panelists. So I thank you for inviting me to speak on a very, very interesting issue. First of all, let me correct you on one thing. I'm a professor in my department. I'm not the head of the department, so perhaps there has been a misunderstanding there. Okay, so my topic today is to talk about India-Bangladesh relations. What are the political, cultural, and security aspects of it? So, this issue, why this issue has been caught attention recently is that first, let us look at the very manner we are connecting with each other. This whole process, as you said, you wanted to hold a, in-person conference. The whole process is that I did not have to go to seek out for Indian visa. I did not have to travel. I did not have to take leave, arrange leave from my institution. So all of this, we can see that how much time it has given us, it has left us with that. We are, even on a Saturday, on a weekend, we are sitting here and giving our time to talk about academic issues, political issues. So first, let us see that, and because of that extra time in our hand, and because of digitalization, the gap between the young crowds and the, older generation, it has been reduced so much that now we all have access to certain digital technology, access to knowledge, and that is how gaps worldwide has reduced. And this reduction in this knowledge gap, or the gaps in accessing resources, it has led to a lot of outcry in different areas that perhaps need to be studied very systematically, studied from a particular point of view. And India-Bangladesh relations, I find now, is trapped in that kind of misunderstanding, that often a huge media outcry that is saying that Bangladesh is being going to a different trajectory than it used to be. So here I start with three particular issues that we often forget when we talk about India-Bangladesh relations and the possible role of China in it, or India-Bangladesh-China in South Asian politics. First is that there is a deep historical tie between India and Bangladesh. That is something that we can never overlook. That is something we cannot avoid while discussing India-Bangladesh relations. So this is something we need to count in, and we need to emphasize on this. The second one is the geopolitical ties between India and Bangladesh. At the beginning of this, discussion, it was pointed out that how, often in India, the Nepalese border is taken more into consideration than the Indo-Bangladesh border. We need to remember that it is the fifth largest international border in the world. So there is certain geopolitical ties, geopolitical issues that are connected with each other, and we can change our friends, we can change our family members, but we cannot simply take Bangladesh away and put somewhere where it is convenient for us. So we have to, India and Bangladesh have to deal with each other, keeping this geopolitical factor in mind. Third is that we often forget that China is not a new friend of Bangladesh. China has been a part of Bangladesh's relations, Bangladesh's development since 1975. And if you remember, from 2006 onward, officially, China has been the biggest trading partner with Bangladesh. So there are certain factors that has been going on. Initially, when I say during this COVID period, we are staying at home, and therefore, perhaps, and due to vaccine diplomacy, I'll come to that a little later, we are thinking that no, China is coming to Bangladesh only in 2020. That is not the case. This is something we need to remember. So keeping this three factor in mind, we need to look at the trajectory of how India-Bangladesh relations has developed, the political relations, the security relations, and other aspects of it. So here we find that the bilateral relations, there has been some topsy-turvy situation in bilateral relations, as happens between two neighbors, as happens between two friends. So that will always be there because of our different type of political interest in international policies, different type of economic interest in international politics. Already my previous speakers have pointed out on the economic relationship between the two countries. One other thing that I like to add, that if you look at the South Asian region, it is the least integrated economic region in the world. It's the South Asians, they only, the intra-regional trade is only 6% in this whole region, and there are many issues behind that, and that is pointed out by my previous speakers, so I'm not going into that. So we need to remember this tactical issues that that is here in the region, and that also affects bilateral relations. Then we need to see another certain issues that we cannot forget and we cannot ignore while we are talking about India-Bangladesh relations, is that whenever a relationship between two countries are institutionalized, there is a better chance of those relationships sustaining for a longer period. So India-Bangladesh relations, if we look at through the lenses of during different regimes in Bangladesh, we have seen that previously India-Bangladesh, the institutional mechanisms, for example, Joint Rivers Commission or Joint Economic Commission, these did not function well previously, and in fact that has been one of the particular area to look into, that why relationship did not sustain, because the all the commissions and all the other mechanisms that can make bilateral relations sustain, that those were not working. But there has been a fundamental change in India-Bangladesh relations since 2009 that we need to emphasize on. There are three particular areas, for example, in terms of security and terrorism area, in terms of land and maritime boundary area, and in terms of water sharing. These three areas, let me now point out that in terms of security and terrorism area, Bangladesh and India, they recognize each other's security problems, and we have seen that a number of areas that in terms of Bangladesh taking action against terrorists, in terms of Bangladesh apprehending terrorists who are operating within Bangladesh and in the northeast provinces of India. So Bangladesh and Indian authorities, they have worked together. So now we have extradition treaties, and now we have that particular mechanisms that will help Indo-Bangladesh relations to sustain. In terms of land and maritime boundary, we have seen a progress that has not been seen before. We have seen the resolution of enclave issues, the outstanding issues that existed since the birth of Bangladesh, and also a very interesting development is the resolution of maritime boundary issues with India. And then water sharing, yes, the major thorny issue in this regard was the that has been taken care of, but however Tista still remains as a as a thorny issue. So that is one other area that we need to sort of emphasize upon. So keeping this particular context in mind, that in 2018 when I went as a participant in Raisina Dialogue over there at ORF, and also Shruti organized a program for me at IDSA where we are talking about India-Bangladesh relations, and I emphasized in both places that when institutions between the two countries work, it does not, changing of government may not matter that much. So that is one area we need to understand, that now the relationship between India and Bangladesh is not only government centric, but it is state centric. It is looking after interest of both states. This is something we are forgetting. When there is a media hype about whether Bangladesh is going out of India's hand, quote unquote, this sort of incendiary speeches, that actually is to attract attention, nothing else but that. But they do not look at the pattern of India-Bangladesh relations that has been formidable in recent times. Another factor that has been, that remained very unrecognized in either media or at the level of policymakers, and often at the level of, academics, is that since the resolution of maritime boundary between Bangladesh and India and Bangladesh and Myanmar, there has been a qualitative change in Bangladesh's stance, and there has been a qualitative shift in how great great powers look at Bangladesh. From 2014 onward, if you see how great powers are engaging in Bangladesh, you would see that it is not only China, but there are also other countries who are interested to come to Bangladesh. I've been writing on this since 2016, and but this is something that has remained very less focused. In India, I've seen that a number of such comments and cautionary notes were written by C. Raja Mohan, written by I cannot hear. Written by C. Raja Mohan, when he's talking about, India should pay more attention to what is happening in the Bay of Bengal region, or whether India is losing, Bangladesh to China in the Bay of Bengal region. So you see that. Very few have paid attention to this qualitative shift in Bangladesh's stance, that Bangladesh has become more assertive in recent years, because Bangladesh has now a bargaining chip vis-a-vis India, China, United States, Russia, Japan, that is founding its third neighbor, that is founding its Bay of Bengal, unfettered access to the Bay of Bengal, and this has given Bangladesh a different kind of voice. So we can see that in 2014, when American Deputy Assistant Secretary of State visiting Bangladesh, arguing that Bangladesh can be one of the key factors in building Indo-Pacific corridor. Similarly, we have seen that then Russian ambassador working in Bangladesh, he said that Russia is coming back to Bangladesh seriously and for a long time. Similarly, we have seen Japan investing in Bangladesh, and then China coming to Bangladesh, and Bangladesh is the recipient of Chinese loan and assistance, second largest recipient in the South Asian region, and half of it, among $39.02 billion, half of it coming through public channel, and the rest half is coming through FDI and engagements between Bangladeshi and Chinese industrial community. So industries and other these economic entities. So we need to see that how Bangladesh has become a destination for great powers. So today the outcry that Bangladesh and India relations is suffering because of, or may suffer because of, China's involvement, that is a very old factor that has been happening since 2016. That has been happening since 2016, and so there are various areas that Bangladesh can play its strength to. Number one, initially it has been pointed out by one of the speakers that yes, the market of Bangladesh is 160 million people, and Bangladesh has shown tremendous resilience that it can also make home to about 1.2 million refugees, 2 million foreign nationals that is taking in Rohingyas in Bangladesh. So we need to factor that in. It's a market of 160 million people. You see, last year it was in May 2019, that America's trade wind for the first time paid a visit in Bangladesh to ascertain what are the areas that United States Commerce Ministry can export more of its goods, because Bangladesh's potential and growth. Then number two is the development of RNG sector in Bangladesh is happening in a way that has not been seen before. And yes, there are a lot of challenges. Mr. Pratim has pointed out there are a lot of challenges, but at the same time, it is no mean feat when you see that Bangladesh is donating RNG products and pharmaceutical products to America during this time of crisis, during this time of Corona crisis. Bangladesh's advancement in the area of disaster management. This is something often less emphasized, but Dhaka is known as the disaster capital, not in terms of holding disaster, but in terms of creating resilience and showing the world how tornadoes, cyclones, and all of these natural disaster Bangladesh has been experiencing, and Bangladesh has found an answer to that, and how to save its nationals, and how to create infrastructure in its coastal regions to during this type of natural disaster. Fourth, another area that has been less emphasize that Bangladesh's rise in the pharmaceutical area. Bangladesh now not only can meet its own demand, but Bangladesh is also exporting in this area. And of course, now here comes the issue of vaccine diplomacy. We have signed a deal with United States of America a few, last week. We have signed a deal with China, and there are possibilities of signing deals with India and as well as Russia in producing vaccines. And not only that, Bangladeshi plants are now invited to invest and work in America. If you remember, Veximco Pharma that has been given that particular type of invitation. So this particular strength of Bangladesh is often less explored. Now you see in April and in April a couple of developments that took place when Japan is withdrawing its investment from China. What is its favorite destination? Even before
I ask you, you have 2 minutes.
Yes. Okay, I'll finish very soon. So even when last year when Japan's Commerce Ministry ran a survey that what is the favorite Japanese destination for investment, and Bangladesh came at the top, despite many other facets, many other limited resources or limited opportunities that we can provide. Despite that, Bangladesh is one of their favorite destinations, and that has become one of the top priorities of Japan during the COVID period as well. And after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe mentioned Bangladesh in one of his speeches, we can find that Mr. Xi Jinping calling Bangladesh our honorable Prime Minister and talking about establishing sister cities. So you can see that the competition is going among the great powers to come here and invest in. So it's time that the title of small state we redefine this very idea, because we know small is in terms of geography, in terms of size. Yes, Bangladesh is small, but we need to factor in that particular sort of idea that we cannot change our geographic surrounding, we cannot change our neighbors. So the relationship between India and Bangladesh is very much strong, and it will remain so, because it is based on certain institutional principles. So this is something we often forget, but we need to sort of re-emphasize on this. And then we are developing our relationship not only with China, but we are developing our relationship with other great powers as well. And China coming to Bangladesh is not a new phenomenon, something that people are forgetting. As I pointed out, that it has been going on for a long period of time in terms of defense cooperation, in terms of economic cooperation, and in many other areas. So I'd finish here, and if you have any questions, if you'd like me to elaborate, I'll be happy to take questions. And it's always an honor to speak, and I'm very honored that I have to speak before me, honorable former High Commissioner to Bangladesh. I'm so I look forward to hearing from you, Miss.
Thank you, Professor Yasmin. I think you drew attention to historical ties, and I think very pertinent for you to point out that China is not a new factor. China has always been there. The emerging strength areas of Bangladesh, which you enumerated, could possibly play a role in further expansion of relationship between India and Bangladesh. I'd like to refute, a statement that you made. Bangladesh as a small state. Bangladesh is by no reckoning a small state. It's a rather large state, actually. If you compare it, if you look at the size of population, I think it would be amongst the 10 largest countries in the world. And I think it's time that in India, we and also the rest of the world begins to treat Bangladesh as not a small country, which the general reputation is Bangladesh is a small state. But Bangladesh is anything but a small state. It's a very large country. And you also said, it actually made that remark twice, that what can we do? Bangladesh, India is a neighbor, and we have to deal with Bangladesh. Bangladesh has to deal with India. I think I would, want it to be a little bit better than that. Bangladesh doesn't have to deal with India. India doesn't have to just deal with India, Bangladesh, but both countries want to deal with each other. We have had tremendously friendly relations in overall terms, and our cooperation. So I don't think we can dismiss it as, look, there is nothing that we can do, and, we are neighbors, so we just might as well mend our fences. It's not that. I think we're doing far better than that, Professor Yasmin. I'd like to now invite my good friend, Ambassador Veena Sikri, for the last word. And I think the range of experience that Veena has in diplomacy for the last nearly 45 years, you've been handling these issues both in the government and outside, also as an academic. So I think you have a very well-rounded perspective. So Veena, you have the floor.
Thank you, Viru. It's really a pleasure to be a part of such an important discussion, and I thank, under your leadership, ARSP has arranged this. This is really a very timely initiative. It has been most interesting to listen to all my friends from Bangladesh and from India to talk on this. I remember Professor Yasmin from the days that I was there, and I visited the IR department of Dhaka University so often that I think I really do have a lot of good friends there, and very good fond memories of my stay in Bangladesh and making so many friends. Now, I think that the discussion has been very fruitful, very useful. But I think that just to put it in perspective, I would like to say that there is no doubt that Bangladesh is among India's most important bilateral relationships. There is no question here. The media may write what they like, small, big, sometimes there's a big effort to politicize and to say whether Bangladesh is doing right or India is doing right or both are wrong, etc. All that is for the media. But in actual terms, in terms of the seriousness with which the government of India has been approaching the relationship with Bangladesh and developing the relationship with Bangladesh, there is no doubt that not only as part of India's neighborhood first policy, that is there, that's the unique and most important dimension of our foreign policy. But within this dimension, I would say, notwithstanding this dimension, in all relationships of the world, I would attach primacy to Bangladesh for several reasons. First of all, it is a civilizational heritage. It is something that is going on not for the last since 1971, not since 1947, but for the absolute decade before that. In fact, if you just look at the terms of connectivity, we talk about connectivity as being the most important, but we must remember that this connectivity was broken only in 1965. Before that, there was absolutely no problem between India and Bangladesh and full connectivity. Now we are trying to restore, and we have largely succeeded in restoring what was there in 1965. And so we would like to get back to the old civilizational relationship with Bangladesh. That is one very important factor. Second factor, and this is, I think, the crux of it, that India does not look upon relationships with Bangladesh as a zero-sum game. It is not a zero-sum game. In fact, there is a tendency to overanalyze whatever happens in India-Bangladesh relations. Oh, is this good for Bangladesh? Is this good for India? Who has benefited? No, but India's approach is not at all in terms of a zero-sum game. We are looking at win-win solutions on every aspect of relationship between India and Bangladesh. That has been the effort from the very beginning, whether it is even things like the Ganga Waters Treaty, whether it is the land border solution, everything has been in terms of a win-win solution. And it has always been, sometimes it takes longer to find solutions if you're looking for win-win solutions, but that is the objective. And that is what we want to work on, and that is what we will always look at: mutual benefit. We will look at how to develop the relationship in terms of this kind of mutual benefit. Now, if you look at it, the relationship today, I think one thing we have to remember very clearly, while I did mention the civilizational heritage, this is important, but the most important legacy of the relationship between India and Bangladesh is the legacy of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. I think that legacy is vital, because that legacy is what has given the modern dimension to the relationship between India and Bangladesh. Now, what did the legacy of Sheikh Mujib involve in the first constitution, which Bangladesh gave to itself in 1972? This legacy was enshrined in terms of the four principles, the four pillars of the Bangladesh constitution: secularism, democracy, nationalism, and socialism, social justice, I would say. So I think this legacy still remains. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has made every effort to bring back this legacy. And in everything that we are coordinating between India and Bangladesh, this legacy is vital to bear in mind, so that we do everything that we are doing in our bilateral relations to develop this legacy, to strengthen it, and certainly in no way So should this legacy be weakened in any way? Now, I think if we look at what has happened, if you look at the dimensions, I don't know how anybody can talk about India-Bangladesh relations and then bring in the factor of China. This is something. Bangladesh is developing its own relations with China. Ambassador Viru Gupta mentioned that, and certainly Bangladesh is fully within its rights to develop its relations with any other country. But always, if you look at any development of relationship, we should also look at what is happening, what are the interests of the most important relationship for India and for Bangladesh, which is the mutual interest. So obviously, when Bangladesh is developing its relations with any other country, this aspect also has to come in mind, because it's important for the people of Bangladesh and the people of India. So every time we are looking at it only from this point of win-win, to say that nothing that happens between Bangladesh and any other country should not be a detraction or a taking away from the India-Bangladesh relations. Now let us see some of the specific aspects. What has happened in the last 1 year, let us take between 2019 and now, the relationship between India and Bangladesh has entered its most dynamic phase. Just see what has happened in the last 1 year, despite COVID or anything else. We had in 2019 the visit of the president of Bangladesh to India for the inauguration of Prime Minister Modi's second term. We had the official visit of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to Delhi in October 2019. We had another meeting between our two prime ministers in the UN on the occasion of the 150th birth anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. We had the visit of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to Calcutta in the month of November. And we had, the implementation of so many projects. And I think this is a very new factor that has come into the India-Bangladesh relation in the win-win context in the last 5-6 years, which is the focus on implementation. And this is giving a new strength, a new boost to Bangladesh-India relations, which has not been there in the past. We've had a lot of agreements, but implementation has been very slow. Although there has been mentioned that implementation continues to be slow, I would like to submit here that in the last 5-6 years, there's been a spurt in the implementation to the benefit of both sides, which has been a very major positive factor. If you look at even the implementation of the land boundary agreement, it happened now. The implementation of the maritime border agreement, we accepted the International Tribunal's decision and have gone ahead with the implementation. Look at the implementation in the power sector, in the energy sector. I mean, India is now giving close to 1,200 megawatts of electricity to Bangladesh, some of it across the border, which is a unique border exchange of electricity, which is benefiting greatly the border areas of Bangladesh. It has brought them economic prosperity, it has brought them growth, it has brought them new industry, and this has been a tremendously big success story between India and Bangladesh, which we must recognize, because this is vital. Now, if you look at it, even earlier in 2010, there was the decision on, we can have container movement between India and Bangladesh by rail and by water. But there was very poor implementation. Now this is being implemented. And we recently had the first container movement between Kolkata and Chittagong ports, and then the containers went by road and then went into Akhora and Agartala, and then to other parts of the Northeast. Now, these are very real benefits which are there, again, win-win, because the entire logistics of the movement is by Bangladeshi enterprises, whether it's Bangladeshi ships or Bangladeshi trucks, and the employment given to Bangladeshi people. And then you have the costing. It is a commercial transaction, and so obviously the economy of Bangladesh is benefiting from that. And I think that this has shown that how, even in terms of access to the Northeast, it is a win-win situation where we will not only benefit the Bangladesh entrepreneurs, but the access to the Northeast given to Bangladesh entrepreneurs is going to be a big boost in terms of market. Because obviously there are three ways. One is that Bangladesh entrepreneurs can directly supply their goods to the Northeast. Second, that Indian entrepreneurs can invest in Bangladesh and the product can be sold in Bangladesh and supplied to the Northeast. And of course, then you have the aspect of a trilateral cooperation with other countries coming in and also setting up these kind of cooperation. So I think this aspect of win-win is what has to govern every region, every aspect of relations between India and Bangladesh. And if we keep that in mind, then you see the result. When you talk of China, do you have 1.5 million people, 15 to 16 lakh people going to China every year from Bangladesh? No. It is with India, and it is our interest to make the visits of the Bangladeshi citizens to India very fruitful, very positive, and very productive. Whether they come for medical tourism, whether they come for education, whether they come for business, whether they come for religious pilgrimage, every aspect, every visit. I believe last year before the COVID, something like we gave 1.5 million visas, but more than 2 million people visited because many people have long-term multiple travel visas, and so there's more people. So you can see that in terms of interaction, the bilateral India-Bangladesh relationship is the most dynamic perhaps of any two countries in the world. There are no other two countries in the world where 15 lakh visas are issued every year. So we have to now continue in this spirit of finding more and more win-win solutions and looking at every problem that Bangladesh may have in terms of finding win-win solutions and creating win-win solutions. Everybody has mentioned, for example, the question of water sharing. And I certainly agree that water sharing is a problem that we, and in the context of Teesta, because I think the Ganga Waters Treaty is a unique example of a win-win solution. It is measured every year, jointly measured. There is no shortfall in the water supply to Bangladesh in terms of the treaty. And I think that we have to carry this forward very actively. In terms of Teesta, we have to continue the dialogue. But in the meanwhile, while the treaty is getting ready to be signed, we should look at areas that are also agreed upon between Bangladesh and India in terms of water sharing, which is water management, river basin management. Crop management. What kinds of crops should be grown so that in the dry season, when there's very little water, we should be able to still have a very productive resource. So I think these kind of very, very realistic cooperation, we should understand that the bilateral water sharing agreements between India and Bangladesh remain bilateral. There is no role for any country other than India and Bangladesh. We should keep it to that, but quickly work to find win-win solutions in that. And this is absolutely important. In terms of trade, we had a very good presentation from Kolkata. But here again, we need to, as I said, in terms of implementation, look much faster at the implementation. For example, the special economic zone for India in Bangladesh. This should be operationalized as soon as possible. The physical facilities that are required to be given to it should be given. Indian companies should be more and more, made more and more interested in going there and in looking at the possibility of the cooperation. In terms of security, I will say that there has been a great progress, a great success story under the leadership of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina in finishing off the presence of any terrorists that used to be there earlier on Bangladesh soil. And this is very clear that this has again been a win-win situation, because as Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina said in her own words, that nobody in Bangladesh want terrorists on their soil. So why should we be interested in having terrorists on our soil? And this has been a great success story, which needs again to be carried further. We have now got strengthened our counterterrorism cooperation between India and Bangladesh. We have got agreements on that. We should carry it forward and work together on it, so that both India and Bangladesh remain secure and safe and prosperous, economically prosperous in developing the legacy of their cooperation. I think one area in which you've also mentioned was the area of financial connectivity. I think this has been a problem, that financial connectivity between Bangladesh and India remains distant. I mean, sometimes you have to send your money via New York or something like that. I think this needs to be worked on. We have people-to-people connectivity, but we need the financial connectivity between India and Bangladesh to hasten the movements of good. I think in terms of culture, we have had a tremendously successful cooperation. The Indian Cultural Center in Dhaka is very, very active indeed. And we do see the tremendous interest. I've seen the function of that center, I've seen the interest among the people of Bangladesh in not only different aspects of Indian culture, but in shared aspects of Indian culture, whether it is Manipuri, whether it is dance, whether it is Rabindra Sangeet, whether it is learning of languages, Hindi is very popular in the Indian Cultural Center. Bangla is a very popular language in India, throughout India, not only, of course, in West Bengal. But so there is this a great interest in doing it. But there is always, over and above all this, when you talk about why people are saying, that all kinds of things are being written about in the press, because there is this whole perception, the battle of perceptions that is being fought out, whether it is the Indian media or the Bangladesh media. Sometimes I feel that there are many vested interests who do not want the India-Bangladesh relationship to develop faster, who do not want, they want to create some obstacles in the way so that it seems that the India-Bangladesh relationship is not developing well. I think that this needs to be looked at. This needs to be overcome, and the way to overcome it is to have frequent discussions and to be very, very careful. I think from the Indian side, we need to be very, very careful to discuss any aspect that is of importance to Bangladesh and of interest to Bangladesh. I mean, let's take I mentioned water resources. Certainly we should discuss it. Let's take the instance of water killings. I think, yes, that is certainly an aspect which we should discuss. I think recently when our Foreign Secretary was in Bangladesh, and he had a very important meeting with Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina, he also had a very important meeting with the Foreign Secretary of Bangladesh, and water killings came up, and they agreed that yes, we have already decided they should come down to zero, but if they're still taking place, let us quickly examine in each case why it has happened and put out information for the people of India and people of Bangladesh as to why it has happened. It may be a drug smuggler, it may be an illegal person, it may be anything. But if something has happened, it may have happened at night, it may have happened that the border security forces were attacked, both on the Indian side and on the Bangladesh side. Whatever has happened, it is very important that both the Indian and Bangladesh sides come together, discuss it, and come out with a reason why it has happened. So there is no misunderstanding, or there's no effort to create any misunderstanding. I think the issue of tourism was mentioned. That is also very important, because there is a lot that that Bangladesh has to offer to India by way of tourism. There was mention of Siliguri. There was mention of the old Zamindari palaces in Bangladesh, which certainly people in India would like to visit. There are the ancient archaeological sites in Bangladesh. There's Mahasanger, there is Mainamati, there is Paharpur, where there's a great interest, a shared heritage. And these sites can be very well developed, I think, for encouraging Indian tourists to make more and more visits to Bangladesh. And I think when the air bubble develops, when we resume frequent contacts after the COVID challenge is over, then we certainly should look at these aspects. In terms of the political relationship, I've spoken to you in great detail about how we have had this most intensive cooperation. India and Bangladesh have developed this, exchanges of creating the high impact community development projects. And even despite the COVID, and despite the lack of contact because of COVID, we have had many instances in the last 3-4 months where through video conferencing supplies have been handed over. We just had an instance of 10 railway locomotives being handed over to Bangladesh despite the COVID. Then we've had a supply of 500 trucks and 300 double-decker buses, which took place from India to Bangladesh, and 200 air-conditioned buses under the second line of credit. All this took place under the video conferencing. Then community clinics have been handed over, about 36 of them in different parts of Bangladesh, so that this healthcare at the rural level may be developed. 11 water treatment plants have been handed over at the rural level again, so that you have this treatment can happen and the rural areas can develop. The development of the petroleum products pipeline. This is an extremely new and important area, so that in the north of Bangladesh, they can receive the petroleum products from the Rumaliganj refinery, and they don't have to go by truck all the way from Chittagong up by trucks to the north of Bangladesh, so that you save a lot on movement of truck, on environmental pollution, and so on. So, we've had 2 visits by our Foreign Secretary to Bangladesh, one in March and one now. Most recently, we've had the Foreign Minister of India visit Bangladesh. We've had the Foreign Minister of Bangladesh visit India. There's been the Joint Consultative Committee. I think a lot of these things, need to be highlighted, that the effort through all of this is not just to have meetings for the sake of meetings, but to solve any problems that Bangladesh may perceive, and to make it very clear that Bangladesh is a very important country for us. We want to develop the relationship, maintain it at a very high level. And in that, we will spare no effort, whether it is in terms of credit line, whether in terms of frequent meetings, and in terms of solving the problems. So let us carry forward in this spirit and not give in to any kind of short-term perception deficits that people try to create by picking up one or the other issue and carrying it forward. And I would say again that whatever problems are there, please talk about them, please bring them out in the open, and we will solve them. I'll just say this at this time. I know we are very, very short of time, and certainly if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you, Viru.
Thank you, Ambassador Sikri. I think very well-rounded presentation. I think you echoed my own feeling that our relation with Bangladesh is probably is undoubtedly the most important relationship from India's perspective, from India's standpoint, particularly in the neighborhood. And thank you also for pointing out that our relationship with Bangladesh is not a zero-sum game. And in fact, that could very well apply to almost every bilateral relationships that any country has. And that if you look at India-Bangladesh, I think the only benchmark that one should apply to India-Bangladesh relationship is the India-Bangladesh relationship itself alone, and not benchmark it to what is Bangladesh doing with Pakistan, what is Bangladesh doing with China, and what is Bangladesh's relationship with X, Y, or Z. It's not important in my mind. I think we have to have sufficient maturity and secure feeling, self-assured feeling that India and Bangladesh are poised to do great things together in the time, particularly when every country is trying to optimize relationship with the others. So I think it is very natural for Bangladesh to try and leverage its relationship with America, with European Union, as some participant had pointed out, and with China. So I think China need not be such a red rag in our own thinking. It's extremely important. And above all, I think we have to remember of the legacy of Bangabandhu, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. In fact, more so that we are commemorating his birth centenary. So I think it's very important to remind ourselves of what he really felt about India, Bangladesh. And I think it is in that spirit that the relationship can be carried forward. I am a little surprised that, in 2.5 hours of our discussion, not a word about Citizenship Amendment Act in India, which created a bit of a flutter in Bangladesh. And I think I must clarify that this development in India was not meant to cause any annoyance in Bangladesh. In fact, we are well aware of the very positive disposition that the present Awami League government has towards India, towards relationship with India, and towards the Hindus in Bangladesh. And we are also aware that many Hindus in Bangladesh were persecuted by the previous government, merely on the suspicion that they were colluding with whatever. So I think the broad reflection is not really, in the current times. This something which happened post 47, and I think this was only an attempt to clear that, and it is certainly not meant to be, any negative reflection on the esteem into which we hold the present government of Bangladesh, or the importance that we attach to our relationship with Bangladesh, as has been amply clarified by almost all participants. I do apologize that I had no time left for any further discussion. I think 2.5 hours on the digital platform where everybody is glued in is quite a bit of time, actually. So we cannot tax you any further. And at this stage, I would request the chairman of our Foreign Affairs Committee, Markandeya Rai, to please propose a vote of thanks and close this function. Markandeya ji.
Thank you, Ambassador Brian Gupta ji. I really thank all the speakers especially the organizer, Antarashtriya Parishad and Foreign Affairs Committee for selecting all the excellent speakers. And main theme was reminiscing the past and looking for the future in three sub-themes, which talks about what was the war of liberation, trade, and people-to-people contact, and our social, cultural, and political and security aspect of relationship of India and Bangladesh. I fully agree with you that India should not think if some country like our good neighbor Bangladesh has relation with China, USA, or wherever, we should strengthen our relation of India's role and legacy of Bangabandhu, our role in liberation of that country, that is our strength. And the way it was really given the line of thought by asking by the convener, Mr. that we should work together. And China, the way Ambassador Brent Gupta has mentioned repeatedly, that we should not bring China in our relationship with our neighborhood. We know that our neighbor have every right to have a relation with China, but we have our relation, and we should see that how we can strengthen. Bangladesh is a very important country, the way it has been mentioned by all the speakers. It has a longer boundary relation. Bangladesh is doing very well in economic front, and we have resolved many of the issues at political level, including boundary level, boundary. Some still issues are there, like the sharing of the water of the river, common river, and that will also should not be a big problem, and we should see that how amicably as a win-win situation, which was mentioned by our last speaker, Veena Sikriji, that we should always have to see that how we can have a win-win situation, and we can see that how the small things can be solved, and there is a political will. Everybody has agreed that there is a political will in both the country to strengthen relation and develop goodwill and to have better trade, better people-to-people contact. One thing mentioned was that bureaucratic attitude was complained. Perhaps it will be taken note by all of us, and maybe something has to be done to improve that image also, that bureaucratic attitude is a little bit problem. And definitely track two should be open to have a more contact, more relation, and to see that how we can develop our relation in those countries and how we can benefit out of this one. With this one, I can see that it was well organized. It was a very rich discussion, and the way Ambassador Brent Gupta has mentioned that we have gone beyond our assigned time, and so I will not take much, but I will really thank all of you that it was really a great and very fulfilling discussion, debate, and presentation. We will see that what recommendation we can take out of that one, so that we can have further dialogue, discussion, and to do some work, because problem is that we have a discussion, but there should be some follow-up. And I think ARSP is determined and really convinced that we should explore the venues where this follow-up can take place. So thank you so much. Thank all the speakers. Thank the convener. Thank the chair. Thank the Secretary General for all your time, your input, and very lively discussion from everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you for
everybody.
inviting us also.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wishes.
Congratulations, Gupta ji, Viren ji.
Thank you.
Rajiv ji, congratulations. Markandeya ji, congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
We need to have more of such meetings. There's so much of interest in discussion on these issues.
Outstanding speakers, outstanding issues.
Ambassador
Wonderful
Gupta, do you have an email
by you,
address
sir.
that I can communicate? This is Shamsher Chaudhary.
A special thanks to the members who have joined us from Bangladesh. We are really delighted to have all of you with us.
We'll keep it for the next time, actually. We'll keep it for the next time.
And
I think our next meeting we will begin with the questions.
Goodbye, everyone.
Brilliant. All right. Namaskar, Pandit ji.
Namaskar, bhai.
Namaskar.
Thanks to everybody.